Welcome. I'm Lorne Sossin, Dean of Osgoode Law School, and we're delighted to be joining you for the summer webcast. We're incredibly excited for the upcoming year at Osgoode, and we know for the students joining us, you've got lots of questions. We hope lots of excitement. We hope we'll be seeing many of you next week on the 12th for the Summer Welcome Day. And what I wanted to do by way of moderating and steering traffic tonight is introduce some of the people we have around the table and give you a sense of some of the topics we'll be covering. But let me say to start that we're coming to you live from the Ignat Caniff building. These are the wonderful new digs for the law school. We moved in just around August, September of last year, and we've had a wonderful coming together of the Osgoode community in this terrific new space. We can't wait to show it to you if you haven't seen it yet. And of course, it's been designed with your interests, with your needs, and we hope with your sense of being at home in mind. And that speaks to a broader sense of community at Osgoode. And you're going to hear a lot about the program, a lot about courses and clinics, and a very wide array, diverse offerings that make Osgoode the incredibly special place it is for legal education. But more than that, it's a place where we care a lot about each other, we care a lot about our community, and we view each individual as a meaningful part of what makes us who we are, and that sense of belonging and that sense of ownership of the experience is what we hope begins tonight, if it hasn't already begun for you. So again, welcome. We have some amazing initiatives coming this year, and in particular, a real sense of leadership in the area of experiential education, a sense of marrying theory and practice, of learning by doing, and you'll hear a lot about that tonight. We think it's one of the things that sets Osgoode apart, and it's something we hope that begins for each student in the first year experience. So now let me introduce some of the people who are joining me late this afternoon for this discussion, and we'll be here to answer your questions and share a little bit about their experience. I'm looking to my left, your right probably, Trevor Farrow. Professor Trevor Farrow is, among other things, our Director of Clinical Education and one of our most beloved members of faculty, and he'll be speaking to you tonight, also as leader of our ethical lawyering and a global community group, which is a cornerstone of the first year program. Penny Spence is sitting next to Trevor, and Penny is a director of our student financial services. I think of it as everything you need to know about surviving law school with your budget intact. We're really, again, delighted to feature some of Penny's questions and answers from the past, and of course, new questions you'll put to her, but we know financial issues are on everyone's mind, so delighted to have Penny join us for that part of the discussion. Bruce Ryder, our professor and the assistant dean of our first year program, is sitting beside me, and someone who again has an overview of the whole first year program and will be speaking on a few different fronts relating to that experience tonight. And then on my other side, my right, your left, we have three amazing Osgoode students. Let me introduce each of them. First, Elena Yosef, who is a third-year student at Osgoode. She comes from a background in biochemistry and English from Western, and she's been involved in a whole range of extracurricular activities, including organizing our annual Osgoode International Law Students Conference. Actually, that's a Canadian-wide International Law Students Conference. She's participated in mooting. She's volunteered with our own CLASP clinic, and she's acted in our annual variety show, The Mock Trial, which I think all three of you are alumni of. But more importantly, she has been elected as the head of the Osgoode Legal and Literary Society, and that's the student body that has organized student life at Osgood since before Osgood was formerly Osgood, back into the myths of I guess mid-19th century. So it's a great tradition here at Osgood, and in addition, she has worked with the Innocence Project, and that again is a centerpiece of our clinical and intensive programs. Next to Elena is John O'Kane, who came to us from UNB, where he studied physics. At Osgood, he's worked with the student government, we call it Student Caucus. For 2 years, I sat on a range of committees, and that is not for the faint of heart. But in addition, has been on the executive of our International Legal Partnerships Initiative, which is a student-led part of our program that involves sending students all across the world to work on public interest projects with organizations, again, all dedicated to using law to improve society. And in addition, he's performed in our mock trial in a variety of memorable roles. He is going to be the 2012 orientation chair and also comes to us as a former resident of Osgood Chambers, the residents across the street from the law school. And I hope he'll be able to address some questions on that front as well. And then finally, Claire Yick is a joint JD Masters of Environmental Studies student in her last year, so her 4th year. For those for whom 3 years of law school is just not enough, you can take a further degree alongside your JD, and she'll speak about her joint degree experience. She's also been very active on a range of clubs at Osgood, and she's the Sustainable Osgood Director for the Environmental Law Society. Is that really a title, the Sustainable Osgood Director?
We're trying to make Osgood more sustainable. And like
that's very cool.
Atkinson Green.
I was just worried it means that as a director you're going to be in that position. We will recycle you every year. That's not all, though. She is the co-president of the Animal Law Society, vice president of the Asian Law Students of Osgood, and a stage manager for the aforementioned mock trial, which, as you can imagine, involves lots of our students and is a highlight of the year for many, and is a student ambassador. This is a role many first-year students take on that involves getting to know lots of our alumni, lots of the prospective students who come through the school, and being able to become a bit of the human face of our school and our community. So welcome to all of you. And let me turn it at this point over to Assistant Dean Ryder to talk a bit about your first week at Osgood.
Great, thanks, Lorne. So I'm in the office of the Assistant Dean first year, which is a position that's devoted to ensuring that the experience of first year students is exciting and rewarding. And I just want to say how much we're looking forward to your arrival in September. And let me just say a few words about my role and how things are going to unfold leading up to September. And then we'll talk a little bit about orientation week, the first week of the school. So the role of the Assistant Dean first year is to provide academic support to the first year's students and oversee the academic experience. So the Assistant Dean first year is available to provide one-on-one academic counseling, organizes a range of academic support sessions, organizes a Dean's Fellow program where upper year students are attached to each first year course and serve as mentors and learning facilitators to help you out in figuring out how to best learn the material that you're covering in each of your first year courses. I think it says a lot about Osgood that there's a dedicated faculty position devoted to supporting the first year students. It just shows how much we care about your academic and professional success. So how are things going to unfold over the course of the summer? Well, in a couple of weeks, you'll get a mailing from the Assistant Dean first year with some advice about how to prepare for the fall, and with a copy of a book by Alan Hutchinson, one of our senior and esteemed colleagues, called The Law School Book, which has all kinds of useful advice about what to expect in law school, how to go about preparing for the start of law school, and how to approach classes, readings, preparing for exams, and so on. So we're confident that you're going to find that book very helpful in answering many of your questions, and it will be in your hands later this month. And then in July, you'll receive a mailing from the Office of Student Services with your registration package, which will have all kinds of information about the section you're in, your class schedule, and so on. I'm working very closely with John O'Kane now, and John can talk some more about this soon, in planning Orientation Week, which starts on Tuesday, September 4th, and is a fun-filled, action-packed week that will involve a number of lectures, will involve a series of welcoming events, social events, there'll be lots of fun events, and there will also be an opportunity to find out all about the different extracurricular opportunities, the ways to get involved in law school. And it's a wonderful week, and I hope that you can book off that week completely, or as much as possible, because it really is a full week, starting early in the mornings around 9 a.m. and going through to evening events. So I often get questions from incoming students saying, will I be able to continue to work that week? And the answer is definitely no. And one of the big reasons for that is one of our courses called Ethical Lawyering in a Global Community, a very innovative course that Osgood offers. The first half of that course takes place entirely in the first week of school, in Orientation Week, along with all the other welcoming and social events. Let me turn it over now to my colleague, Professor Trevor Farrow, who's the coordinator of the Ethical Lawyering in a Global Community course, to tell you a little bit more about it.
Thanks very much, Bruce. I also am just delighted to be meeting you, even in this web-based way. Really looking forward to seeing people in the fall. Let me spend a bit of a couple of minutes on the Ethical Lawyering in a Global Community course. This is a course that is part of really the innovation at Osgood about thinking about what lawyers do, the kinds of communities we work in, and the kinds of people who come in and where you might be going. And so the idea of having a course on this is to think about who we are as lawyers, who we are as professionals, and really about the communities that the diverse communities that we work and live and think in. And so we really spend a lot of energy and have devoted what Professor Ryder talked about, this innovative course on ethics and internationalism. And the idea and why we do this partly in the first week is that we want to get people starting to think about, why did I come to law school and how might that connect up with my legal life and who I am as a lawyer? And thinking about those notions of diversity and the different people who are here. So we will be jumping right in with 2 feet during the first week, and we'll have 3 days of what we hope to be a really stimulating part of the program there. And we'll obviously discuss this when you're here, but the idea then is we will come back with quite an intensive session in the new year. That's probably enough on that for now, and I can turn it over to Bruce and then maybe to John.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm the orientation chair coming in for next year, and all of our volunteers are incredibly excited to meet you. The transition into law school is a unique one. A lot of people don't know what to expect, and Orientation Week is set up in such a way to integrate you into the community as easily and as smoothly as possible. There is the academic component. Actually, Professor Farrow is my ethical lawyering professor. And while you're having those stimulating conversations during the day, Legal and Lit and our orientation committee is working really hard to make sure that you can have a social integration into the community as well. What we do and what I found very valuable in my orientation week is when working and having fun with your section in orientation week, you're getting to know your classmates and future colleagues. But I also found it very helpful to connect so closely with upper year students, so 2nd, 3rd, or 4th year law students who are partaking as orientation leaders, are there every step of the way, and you can ask them every little question. Like, well, where do I get this? What's going on campus? Well, how do I start to study? And things like that. And all the tips and tricks of the trade can come out at that week, and it's a relaxing, fun environment with everything from a classic class photo that's taken in front of Old Osgoode Hall, as we do every year, to our grand formal event that closes off the week. It's hosted by our dean. And all of that comes together in a really nice way. We're really excited to have you, and I hope you enjoy it.
Another part of Orientation Week is also getting to know student organizations. At Osgood, we're pretty special in the fact that we have over 40 student clubs that deal with everything from cultural clubs to clubs particularly interested in one issue in law. and also clubs that are just really fun that relate to music and all sorts of other fun things. So that's a great way to get to know upper year students as well, as John mentioned. And the following week, the plan is to have welcome events for clubs as well. So we hope that you come out to both orientation week and also the clubs week that will follow, because it's a fantastic way to meet other people. And I know it's really stressful, but meeting other students and knowing that they're just as anxious as you are is really, really great to know that you're not the only one that is freaking out right now watching this.
You may be the only one. We think it's pretty unlikely. And the experience many people will have after this, the intensity of that orientation week, and intensity in a great sense of the word, of feeling really immersed in the school and getting a sense of that belonging in our community. Many people will feel like they're done. There can't possibly be anything left having survived that experience. But that, in fact, is just the beginning of first year. So let me turn it back to Assistant Dean Ryder and then to Claire to talk a bit about the first year program and how it will unfold for you.
Great, thanks, Lorne. So after the first week, orientation week, from September 4th to September 8th, the following Monday, that is September the 10th, your regular class schedule will begin. And you'll receive your schedule of classes in the summer in the mailing from Student Services in July. You don't need to make any course selections for the fall. You will all be allocated to a particular section. There are 4 sections. You'll find out which section you're in, and you'll receive your course schedule and get the list of your professors at that time. And the first year program at Osgood is divided into a mix of 1 semester courses and full year courses, and the ethical lawyering course, which is taught intensively. And there's also a course in the winter called a perspective option, which is taught in a seminar format and introduces students to particular perspectives on the law, sometimes particular skills or interdisciplinary perspectives. For example, there are 20 of them, and it's the one part of the first year curriculum that's elective. You get to choose which of those perspective options you would like to take, but it's a choice you won't need to make until November, so don't worry about it this summer. So what's the program going to look like in the fall? Well, you'll have ethical lawyering and orientation week, as we were describing. You'll also have several hours of legal process, which is a full year course that introduces you to the basic principles of legal reasoning, to the institutions of the Canadian judicial system, to how to go about interpreting statutes, and importantly, it will help you develop writing skills by asking you to engage in a series of different writing assignments, like the preparation of a legal memorandum for a colleague at a law firm, or preparing a brief for court. And you'll also have an opportunity to do a moot, that is, get on your feet and present oral argument to a court as part of the legal process course in the second semester. So legal process full year course starts in orientation week with several hours, continues through the fall, and then through the winter as well. In the fall, there are 3 courses that finish in December: contracts, torts, and criminal. And the other course, the final course that you'll be taking in the fall, is State and Citizen, Canadian Public and Constitutional Law, that runs the whole year. And that's the quick overview of the first year curriculum, and look forward to hearing and responding to any questions you have. And let me just pass it over now to Claire to give you a few thoughts about the first year curriculum and the program as a whole from her perspective.
Great. So I'm Claire. I'm a 4th year student. So I'm in a joint MES JD program. I did 1 year of my master's and then 3 years of law school. So for my perspective option in first year, I took globalization and law, and it was a great small class. It had about 15 people in it, so you really got to know the professor and get feedback, on your thoughts, and just have a smaller experience, because the rest of your classes are quite a bit bigger. One thing we didn't mention, I guess, was the mentoring program, which I thought was really valuable. Having an upper year student, it's a 2nd or 3rd year student that you have in first year that you're partnered up with, usually based on your interests. And my mentor, or my mentee right now, she's in the MBA JD program, and she has a lot in common with me. She likes environmental issues, and she comes out to a lot of my events, so that's how I got to know someone in the lower years.
That's great. So why don't we move to some of your questions? And we wanted to, again, focus each question period a little bit on the topics we've just considered. So in this case, look a little bit at that first week in the first year program, but obviously happy to take questions on anything on your mind at the time it inspires you. So looking to the screen, which you can't see, but there is a screen behind the cameras that, on which the questions are posted. Here's a first one coming to us from Liv in London, which is on law and economics. And the question says, thanks for hosting tonight's event. With respect to courses offered at Osgood, are there options for taking courses that specialize in the field of law and economics? And I think, I'll turn to Bruce to respond to that more. Certainly in the first year program, and this is worthwhile expanding on, while you'll be taking contracts, torts, property, the courses that Bruce mentioned, individual faculty who teach it will bring perspectives, different lenses to bear on that material that will include law and economics perspectives, include feminist legal theory perspectives, include perspectives drawn from a range of conceptual lenses, if you will. So you can look at the same problem and it's going to look entirely different, raise a different set of questions depending on the perspective. And then in the upper year, we have the more specialized offerings for aficionados of one or other of those lenses. But Bruce, beyond that, anything you wanted to say to address it?
Well, it's quite possible that there could be a course on law and economics as one of the perspective options that will be offered in the winter semester. As I was mentioning, the first year curriculum is entirely set with the exception of the perspective options, but there are 20 of them, and the roster of courses won't be finalized until November. But because we believe that there are a number of fundamental building blocks to the study of law, the first year curriculum is set. But the upper year curriculum at Osgood is wide open. There are no course requirements. It'll be entirely up to you to fashion your own curriculum. And the curriculum at Osgood is extraordinarily broad. There are courses on just about everything, and they change all the time. So for people with a particular interest in any particular interdisciplinary perspective on the law, there will be a range of seminars offered, and also many of the core courses that relate to law and economics, like courses in commercial law, business associations, taxation, and so on, will often be taught from a disciplinary perspective that merges legal and economic perspectives.
So I think the question also is a nice point of departure to explore another important difference in each student's experience in the first year, and that's the different teaching styles that you're going to be exposed to, not just the perspectives of the faculty, and often our faculty bring their own research, their own questions and passions to bear on the material, but you'll be exposed to a range of different styles of teaching, and from, many people ask, is there still Socratic teaching going on in law school where the learning is done through posing questions and exploring this involving student participation? Is it lecture-based? Is it discussion-based? And maybe we'll turn to the students for this, and just thinking back to your first year experience, what range of teaching styles, Elena, did you get exposed to?
Well, it was very funny because I remember my first torts class, and Professor Hutchinson came in with the black robe on, announcing to everyone that he was the evil deity, and then he had an ethical question for all of us. And I think pretty much everyone in the class was freaking out, and we were just like, oh God, did we read everything in his book? Like, what is he going to ask us? So his method was very much like he really wanted to interact with the class a lot, which I found great. And then we had our state and citizen professor, Professor Pilkington, who just like used slides, and she was also very interactive. But you'll find that most of your professors, like unlike an undergrad, although I loved my undergraduate degree, I found that a lot of the professors weren't as engaging, whereas pretty much everyone at Osgood is an expert in their field, and they really, really love what they do. So they're very passionate when they speak, and they're really like, I haven't really had a professor that I've kind of like dozed off to. Like everyone has really like been very alert.
We set the bar even higher. Stay awake.
No, but like everyone has been just like very, very engaging, and I've loved every class I've taken at Osgood so far.
Great, and I think in terms of the experience of teaching styles and of the range of perspectives that faculty bring, I mean, it's why we divide up the first year class into the 4 different sections, why we try to schedule a different range of faculty from junior to senior, and perspectives and styles and backgrounds, so that everyone is going to get that full range, and no one's going to go to each class and say, boy, that sounded just like the one I had. So I think the diversity is really the strength of being one of the richest faculties around in terms of the depth of experience and breadth of perspectives that our teachers bring. So, yes,
Lorne,
Trevor.
maybe just while others are thinking about their questions and a few things, just before we move too far away from the first week, the orientation week, I was thinking of reflecting on John and Bruce's comments and Elena's comments about the balance of the events, thinking ahead and what have you. And I think my sense now of having watched it and thinking it through, and others might, I think, would agree, is coming at it really, as Bruce said, with sort of an open slate of time, with an open mind. Really, you're going to meet lots of interesting people. There's so many different options. And there are a bunch of different events. We do have some academic programming for you, and I think it's important to come expecting to do some of that. And so I think the folks in hindsight have often said, I wish I had thought a little bit more that I was going to be doing some thinking and reading and learning that week. So really do come thinking that you're going to be doing there's going to be all sorts of fun stuff, and there's going to be moments where you're going to want to have some time to think and reflect on what we're talking about. We certainly don't try and overload you. There isn't a massive amount of reading and what have you, because we recognize it's a really packed week and we want you to enjoy it. But there's some interesting questions that we want you to tackle before you get into some of your other classes. And so I think that's kind of an interesting and unique element at Osgood that we certainly encourage you to be open for.
All right, well, let's go to another question from the screen you can't see, and it is from Adam in Kitchener, and the question is on student clubs. It reads as follows. Thanks for this event. After graduating, I'm interested in combining my aviation and future law degrees. Are there any clubs or electives that have a focus on aviation? And it's hard to imagine any kind of passion or interest a student could possibly have that we don't have a club for. So Elena, maybe this is again another one for you as the guru of student life.
Well, as I said previously, we do have over 40 clubs. We do not have a club that deals with law and aviation. We do have very specific clubs. Like, for example, we have one club that focuses on only like helping with wrongful conviction. So like there can be clubs that are very specific, and as long as you have an interest, you can start a club in September. And also there's a process to start a club in the winter semester. So if you have a particular interest and you want to start a club, we make it quite easy for you, and you also get funding from your student government in order to host events. So while we don't have one now, that you can start one in the coming year.
No, and aerospace law is a burgeoning field. We had a faculty member who's retired a few years ago who made a point of ending class punctually so he could make it to his plane where he would fly to Prince Edward Island. This is Ian McDougall. And so I just assumed that most law professors had planes and reasons to fly to Prince Edward Island, but it turned out he was the only one. But you'll find kindred spirits within the student and faculty and staff communities, and I think that's a great point about if you don't see a club that meets your needs, start one. I've got another question from Ryan in Toronto. Hello, is it possible to contribute to or be an editor at the Osgoode Hall Law Journal during your first year? Which is a great question. We've got a man with the answer right beside me, I think.
Absolutely. It's the Osgoode Hall Law Journal is one of Canada's leading law journals, and like so many great things at Osgoode, was started by the students. In this case, back in the 1950s, and virtually all of the editorial work at the journal is done by students with faculty involved as an editor-in-chief and as an advisory board. And for first-year students, there are opportunities to work as a junior editor, which means that you're involved in the editorial work on particular articles that have been accepted for publication and are being prepared, finalized for publication. So editing the text and checking the footnotes and sources and so on is a very important part of that editorial work. And so junior editors are first-year students, and then you can apply to become a senior editor or managing production editor and so on in the upper years. So it's a great opportunity and something to consider. And of course, they don't expect first-year students to have a ton of time to devote to the work, which is why you start as a junior editor. As far as contributing to the journal, that's much more difficult as a beginning law student to have one's scholarship. For example, you'll write a paper in your perspective option. To have it accepted by a journal of the stature of the Osgoode Hall Law Journal is very difficult. But there are many other places where students are contributing to legal knowledge and legal analysis. For example, we have a website, again, run by students called thecourt.ca that publishes blog-like pieces.
Well, it's actually not just blog,
yeah,
but actual blogs.
that publishes short commentary on recent decisions of the Supreme Court of Canada, and almost all of those commentaries are written by Osgoode students, and they receive a wide audience. So there are many opportunities along those lines for your work as students to reach a broader audience.
No, which is terrific. In fact, we've seen cases that are citing those blog entries from the court.ca. So there's an amazing feeling when something you've written and contributed to becomes part of developing the law in the area. And I think we have a similar type of question coming from John in Toronto, which reads, really enjoying the webcast so far. So are we. How can I get involved in the during first year with CLASP, which is our legal aid clinic on campus, and again distinguished from the Parkdale clinic, which is involves a number of Osgoode students but is located downtown. And Trevor, do you want to tackle this one?
Sure, John, thanks for the question. I'm going to speak in a little while about a bunch of our clinical programs, so I won't do all of that now, but just to specifically answer your question, CLASP, and for those who don't know, is the Community and Legal Aid Services program here at Osgoode, and as the Dean mentioned, it's one of our our two poverty law clinical offerings. It is staffed by, we've got permanent staff, and also we have senior students who play senior roles at the clinic in the upper years. However, there are about 150 or 200 volunteer students each year who play a significant role at the clinic, and a lot of first years do that work. And so there's a huge opportunity for some really dedicated first year students to get into that, and it's not an overwhelming amount of time that you have to spend, but it's important time. It's important to the community, and it's important to the clinic. You'll get some information on that program early on because it is such a popular first year program. And the bottom line answer to your question is yes, absolutely, lots of opportunity to volunteer at CLASP in the first year.
That's great. So I think what we'll do is there's another a question or two I see about different clinical and experiential opportunities, which we're going to come to. But I want to finish each Q&A session with a question from years past that you may be too shy to ask, but dying to know. And the one I'm picking to begin with, because it has that aura of when you come and everyone else assumes you know things that you may not about life in law school, and it's a question that many of us on the faculty, staff reflect on. We're never quite sure where students land on this, and it's can I wear pajamas to school? And I know you'll have your own views, and we don't have the ability to do a survey, but I wanted to go to the students. All of you, of course, have had this thought. Some of you have seen others venture down this kind of path. Claire, let's start with you. Where do you stand on the pajamas issue?
I have a firm stance on no pajama policy. I think it's unprofessional. But during exam periods, when everyone's sporting their playoff beards and the girls no makeup, just ponytail, pajamas are acceptable, but only during exam period.
And do you have a clear sense, and I ask this more from my own personal anxiety, of when someone actually is in pajamas as opposed to just, what seems a very casual but clearly non-pajama look?
It's typically the fabric. I think it's like a flannel would be a pajama.
Okay. John, I can tell you've got a view rising.
I am firmly pro pajama, definitely. I would go beyond just exam period and say even the month before exams, when you're preparing for the exams, the occasional onesie I think is acceptable.
And without even going into the line crossing moment of the onesie comment, Elena, where are you generally on the pajama question?
I'm on Team Snuggie. I found that initially when they came out, everyone was like, it's a backwards robe. What is that? And then everyone was like, wait, it's amazing. So I'm Snuggie on this issue.
Okay, well, we will no doubt have some follow-up on that point, but it actually is an important segue to the next area, which is about paying for law school, because fashion choices may well be dictated by disposable income, which for many may mean just a mixing and matching version of the same outfit again and again. And Penny Spence, it is fair to say, has seen it all. Every strategy you can possibly imagine for managing your budget. And I think her opening advice is, if you're already worrying about a budget, it means you have one, and that's not a bad place to start. But I'll turn it over to Penny to guide us through paying for law school.
I certainly recommend wearing pajamas as often as possible if it will save you money. It's extremely important you get through law school financially. I'm best known at Osgood as Miss Moneypenny, and as the Director of Student Financial Services, I want you to know that your financial concerns are our first priority. And as such, my office has an open door policy. I may be hiding under the desk, but my door will be open. There are days when I want to hide under my desk. Seriously, financial concerns can be quite frightening. You have to get your head around finances, as worry and stress on your law impacts on not only on your law studies, but on your health and on your overall enjoyment of law school. And if you can't come to law school and enjoy law school, then that's too bad. And we do our best to make sure that that does not happen. And don't let debt scare you, because for many students these days, it's impossible to avoid running up significant debt. Remember that your job and our job and Osgood job is to keep your debt as low as possible. Even with Dean Sossin sitting so close, and he actually scares me, but in my line of work, I have to say, law school is a very expensive venture. Tuition alone will be $20,564 next year. However, if you are focused and if you plan financially ahead of time with a realistic budget, and you live within your means, and that's the important thing, it is workable. I had a recent graduate send me a thank you note, and I'm using the same note I used last year because I haven't had a better one. This student wrote to say, I'm well aware that someone who normally wouldn't have the means to go to law school, and I'm quoting here, Osgood's amazing financial services program, however, gave me an opportunity that I never would have had otherwise, and that I'll definitely never forget. It made a huge difference knowing that if I just focused on my goal, followed my passion, and lived responsibly, that my school would be there to help me along the way. So I thank you for all your hard work, dedication, and above all, patience. Dealing with neurotic, cash-strapped law students must require very special kind of patience. And I end the quote. And I want to say we do have patience here at Osgood. And our goal is always to service our students in both a caring and a professional way. Upwards of 60% of law students apply annually for bursaries because they determine when they come to law school or ahead of time, probably in the summer before they come, that they do have financial need. You should never, ever be embarrassed about your financial situation because today, at all law schools, you're in the majority when it comes to students with financial need. I have an assistant, Nadia. We are both there for you if you need us, and we fully understand all manner of situations. You are welcome to contact us anytime by phone, by email, and probably the best thing is to come by the office in person. All our numbers are on the website, so make sure if you have any questions this summer that you get in touch with us. The Student Financial Services Office deals with all manner of student assistance, including the following: entrance and upper year scholarships and awards, bursaries, which really are the key to law school, medals and prizes, internships, such as our wonderful Ian Scott public interest internship that sends 10 to 14 students every summer all over the world to do special projects that they actually set up. We have an emergency funding program, and we have external funding and much more. This past year, Osgood allocated about $3.5 million to our students. The secret to funding law school is to ensure that you budget properly, that you plan ahead, and that you take full advantage of all of the sources of funding that are available to you. Deadlines and reminders are posted on our website and sent to you in emails. You cannot afford to miss a deadline, because if you do that, you'll miss some available funding, and that is not a good thing. We have several sources of funding that I'd just like to mention to you to get you motivated and get you started for next year. Provincial government student loans, or OSAP as it's called in Ontario, is a basic and essential source of funding for all law students, and it's a requirement for applying for an Osgoode bursary. You must never, however, lose sight of the fact that OSAP is all government funding is a loan. I find students just seem to assume that they can get OSAP pretty easily, and it doesn't matter the fact that the numbers are building up over the years, but it is a loan. The advantage of OSAP, however, is that it's interest-free while you're at law school, and that some portion of it becomes a grant and does not have to be paid back when you graduate. Currently, the maximum amount a single student can receive for OSAP is about $14,000. The OSAP application has been online since early May, and you should apply immediately. It's a new process this year, so you should be very careful in filling in completing the application, and there's something called a master agreement that you also have to complete. If you are from out of province, as John is, you should also apply early to your provincial student loan program. Now, because Osgood expects students to take responsibility for funding law school, we require you to put in place a student line of credit if you wish to apply for bursary. So we have two requirements: that's student government funding and the student line of credit. Over a decade ago, Osgood established and continues to negotiate for the best student line of credit program with one branch of the Royal Bank. The advantages of the RBC student line of credit are as follows. You do not need a cosigner. Interest and repayment is at prime plus 1%. We just negotiated that with RBC. You are considered a student in your articling year, that's your 4th year of studies, and you do not have to pay back principal in that 4th year. And as a bonus, you have a further 5th year that RBC considers as a grace year or a grace period until you must commence paying back on the principal of your loan. So that makes the RBC student line of credit the best 5-year deal in town. And so as a bonus, you receive, and as a bonus, you receive knowledgeable and caring professional service from RBC. Having said all that, you may, of course, deal with any financial institution of your choice. We highly recommend you deal with the RBC branch at Highway 407, where we initiated the special program. And with Cindy Wong, who's been looking after our students for several years now, she understands our students and our programs and continually provides excellent service. We designed our bursary program to work hand in hand with the student line of credit. So if you apply for an Osgoode bursary and you're assessed as having some level of financial need, at the very least, the Osgoode bursary will cover the interest that you will pay on your student line of credit for that year. Most importantly, what that gives you is a second and important source of interest-free funding for the 3 years that you're at Osgoode. Please note that, maybe I said this, no, I don't think I did. Please note that even if you are turned down for a provincial government student loan and or a student line of credit, with proper documentation, you may still apply for an Osgoode bursary. Let me say something about the Osgoode bursary funding. There is only one bursary process at Osgoode, and it's in the fall, and you will make an online application immediately after you arrive on the 4th of September. The deadline is September the 24th this year, and it's a firm one. Actually, as I said many times, it's cast in stone. If you don't make the application at that point in time, you will not receive a bursary at Osgoode for the entire year. So it's extremely important for students to remember that and to make sure you meet the deadline. We ask all students to be considerate of their fellow students who are struggling with high educational debt. We do have many students who enter Osgoode already with high educational debt. The bursary funding is for students with actual financial need. So if you can fund yourself through other means, other sources, then we strongly suggest that you leave the bursary funding for the students who are in circumstances where they really do need it. There are several sample budgets that will shortly, actually tomorrow, be updated on our website of what we consider to be reasonable expenses for the 8-month study period you're at Osgoode. They are an important reference, particularly for your financial planning and your bursary. Generally, and this is going to surprise people, if you live at home, you're expected to keep your expenses at about $25,000. That's everything you need for the 8-month period, for $20,000 to $25,000. If you live on your own, in other words, if you live in the Chambers, which is a great place to live, or if you live in an apartment, you are looking at about $34,000. Tuition keeps going up, cost of living keeps going up, and I want to be brutally honest with students as to what it will cost you for your studies at Osgoode. And of course, we will help you out in every way we can to meet those costs, and I'm sure you'll be able to do it. Also on our website, there is what's called the Moneypenny Financial Tracker, and this is a system that allows you to keep track of every penny, no pun intended, any penny you spend. And if you get into the habit of using it on a daily basis, I absolutely guarantee you that you will be amazed at how those cups of coffee and those little sandwiches at lunchtime that you pay for add up.
Now, Penny, I don't want to break this to you, but I actually think we have discontinued the penny. So we have a whole nickel metaphor going soon.
Now I won't have a ball marker when I play golf because that's what I use.
I think we will have a holdover period, so it's good for this year.
Oh boy, I'm on my way out, I can tell that.
I don't think so.
Also, as well, I wanted to mention that the tracker will teach you. It's really important because it will teach you to be frugal at the outset. It will allow you to make the most of your resources and financial and planning, and it will even calculate the interest you accrue on your student line of credit as you go along. So it's a truly great tool if you're willing and need to live frugally. There's one other source of funding, and it's external funding. There is free money out there, and we encourage you to make an effort to find it. Each summer, we have a student researching sources of external funding for our students. We have one this summer. One of the best sources of external funding is for bursary competitions. There's all kinds of bursary competitions out there where you can take an essay that you're writing when you're at law school, or that perhaps you wrote coming into law school. You can tune it up a bit, fancy it up a bit, and submit it to the essay competition. I know so many students that do receive some extra funding in winning these contests, and it's sort of an easy thing to do. And best of all, 4 years ago, the Student Financial Services established an Osgood-only external opportunity site, which affords all Osgood students the opportunity to both search and sort external awards by deadline, value, ease of application, and no U of T student can get on that. So get a head start and take advantage of this tool this summer to find some additional sources for yourself. You have time this summer to really get your finances in order, and you really should take advantage in doing that. And you can call or email us anytime, and we'll help you out with that. Finally, I'm sorry I'm speaking too long. Finally, our goal is to work with you at Osgood to keep your debt load as low as possible and to encourage you to do up a budget, as I've just said, that is reasonable, and to financially plan for all 3 years. And financially planning for all 3 years is very, very important. Be smart, read the Financial Services website, and take advantage of everything out there. And talk to other students. Just this morning, John and I were discussing the best ways to cope with finances while at law school. And you need to know that other students can be a very good source of information. John has worked hard over the last 2 years to keep control of his finances. And now I think he can offer you some advice. So just don't contradict me, John, but tell them the secrets to keeping their debt load down.
Okay, I'll try to keep in line. So money and debt can be, and absolutely, definitely is, a component of the stresses of law school. But you can manage it and keep it in something that you can deal with on a day-to-day basis, and it just becomes a habit. There are some things that I like to add just as like practical matters of things that you might deal with as you're going through this loan process. Because students have likely borrowed before or made budgets before, but just not in this kind of magnitude. So I can't stress what she said enough. Apply for the loans as soon as possible. Having all of that sorted out will be incredibly helpful for you. If you are out of province, there may be some extra hurdles you need to jump over. I'm an out of province student, but if with working with enough time in advance, you can sort those things out. And I'd like to stress that you're not in this alone. Very often money can be a conversation that people are uncomfortable with, but again, upper year students have tactics for working within this exact framework. We have similar costs, similar arrangements, and are dealing with these stresses. So some small life lessons to remember could be just, there's a difference, Penny and I were talking about this very thing this morning, between a budget and a cash flow plan. Yeah. So you say, I have all these loans coming in, that's great, I can break even according to this budget, but then you need to remember when you get your apartment, when you move to Toronto, you need to pay first and last month's rent. And there may be costs associated up front that you need to plan for in a cash flow sense as well. And you've got plenty of time. You're chiming in here in June. You've got months to figure this out. And I can't stress enough that Penny's office is a great resource to check in with if you're trying to figure things out before or while you're here.
Great. Well, I can say just before we move to some questions for Penny and for others that The long view is this. There are two milestones in most students' legal career that you think back on over the years to come. One is your graduation day and that sense of accomplishment. You finish law school. And the other is the day you pay your last student loan or line of credit payment. And you are, I won't tell you how old at that point, but it's some years later. And during those years, as you're waiting for that last payment to come, you reflect on some of the choices that would have been so easy to do differently in year one or year two or year three of law school. So that I think the point that Penny emphasized, and I think it is really one of the most significant challenges, is resisting that kind of impulse of, put off till tomorrow, what isn't facing me down today, and the choices you make that may just be seem modest at year one of law school, when you think to all the interest and all the payments that need to come down the road, is just what can really get in the way of achieving all of your other goals. So I think this is advice well taken, and we've got some questions already to pursue it. And let me go to the first. This is from Sean in Toronto, and the topic's on line of credit. The question is, I've applied for a student line of credit, but funds will not be released until a letter of enrollment is provided by the school. When will this letter be provided?
If Sean had applied to RBC, you would not, Sean, need a letter of enrollment. All we use at RBC is a copy of your the fact that you've paid your $450 deposit to come to law school. Other banks, other financial institutions do require other things, and I can't speak for those other institutions, but if you need a letter of enrollment, and if they won't accept your letter of offer to Osgood, and they won't accept the proof that you've accepted the offer by making a payment, then what you'll have to do is contact student programs, and they have a standard letter that they can do for you. But they can only say that you will be attending law school.
Right.
So that's the only answer that I can give you on that.
No, that's again helpful, and I should add, Penny receives nothing from RBC in the way of gifts, cruises. There's no kind of special Penny line of credit, nothing like
Just
that.
Just headaches.
But I should add, is as aggressive as any student would want her to be in negotiating the absolute best deal, and as she said, there's no requirement to use them, but there are these extra aspects of it that make it very attractive. We have another question which speaks to a broader issue on the minds of many students, and that's employment while you're at law school or in the summer before. This is from Jen in Burlington, and the question is, what kind of employment are students able to secure during the summer months that may help in financing law school? And again, this is an excellent question and speaks to a whole other aspect of our law school program. Maybe, Bruce, I can turn it over to you to start, and then we can get some views of others.
Sure. Just being in law school provides you with all kinds of opportunities that you wouldn't have had previously. So, for example, students who are enrolled in our intensive and clinical programs, often if they get an offer of enrollment, will be accompanied with a summer job offer. So we have 20 students, for example, working at the Parkdale Community Legal Services every summer. And the same is true. There's a number of students working at CLASP and at some of the other, with some of the other intensives. Lots of students work at as research assistants with professors in the summer. There are a handful of summer jobs at the Osgoode Hall Law Journal. John, you're working with Penny. There are a number of offices at the law school that hire students. And there are also some law firms and law offices that hire first-year students, but not that many. It's quite difficult to get a job after first year. And
After
really,
second, it's a different story.
But after second year, a totally different story. You may have heard of the famous OCI process, the interview process for second-year students. And so there are many jobs available in law offices, law firms, government offices, and so on for second-year students. But first-year students, generally speaking, don't count on getting a job in a law firm, although there are some.
So, Bruce, just on that, and this is follow-up, but for Penny, I found on the OSAP front, a lot of students figure that when they get an allotment as they start law school, based on their financial situation, that's kind of locked in time. But if you do get a summer job, you're earning some income. Is that factored into the next year's OSAP assessment, or does it bear on bursary eligibility? And are there impacts that are relevant to keep in mind?
Yeah, it bears on both. But I mean, we realize that students need to earn money in the summer. So in terms of OSAP, it only impacts significantly if a student gets one of the big Bay Street jobs and earns whatever, 25,000 or whatever it is over the summer. Their OSAP will be cut because of that. In terms of the group of students that it actually does impact on are mature students, because mature students come to law school, many of them having full-time positions that they then quit when they get to law school. So when they apply to OSAP in first year, they get very little out of OSAP. But what I tell them constantly is, in second and third year, you'll be just fine. The OSAP will come in second, but they have to plan even more carefully when they're coming in first year to be sure that they can handle the costs of law school.
And just to follow up on Bruce and Lauren, your point about working with faculty and what have you. Elena worked with me one summer and then through the year after your first year of law school. Through different, or I think I've got about 12 students working with me right now, and through a research institute, a couple of programs that we put on through the clinical education office, and so I don't want to overstate it. I'm not suggesting that all faculty have a massive amount of jobs. We don't. Having said that, most faculty, or I think all faculty, have at least some people working with them at some capacity. So I think the idea is be proactive. If you find people you like to work with, ask them about it, and more often than not, there'll be something. But I would suggest to be proactive as opposed to waiting for the spring for a job ad to come out, because often those just don't come out. It's typically someone approaches a prof and says, "Do you need some help?" and they often say yes.
So can I add one thing to that?
And then we'll get the students to weigh in on their
I didn't say
experience.
this, and I should have. In fact, with the bursary process, if students just do not work in the summer, choose not to work in the summer, that almost works in some ways against them. If because we look for students to earn some money in the summer and not sit around and do nothing. So it can work both ways.
Oh, we don't let in a sit around and do nothing crowd. So now let's listen to three people who sat around and did nothing. No, the experience firsthand. Elena, you want to start?
Yeah, so as Professor Farrow mentioned, I was a research assistant for him last summer, and I'm working as a research assistant again this year, and lots of students do that. One thing that I want to point out is that Osgood has a website called OLE, and basically it lists all job offers that Osgood pretty much knows in our community, and other firms and other organizations also post on that website. So as a student, you are able to log in and look for job postings and apply for them throughout the year and throughout the summer as well. So that'll be a great resource for students to use. And one other thing that I wanted to mention is that you shouldn't shy away from non-law jobs. I think there's this perception that after first year, you have to do something at a firm, you have to do something in law, and firms and employers don't care about that. They just want someone that has an interesting experience. So if you have a cool job or just any job, they're gonna be impressed no matter what. So don't freak out about not having a law job. Nobody cares.
John.
Penny mentioned earlier the Ian Scott Public Interest Fellowships. And I came to Osgood to kind of really seize on to different international opportunities I hadn't been exposed to before. So for my summer between first and second year, I actually worked in Kampala, Uganda, at a local NGO there doing human rights work. And that was entirely in part because of the support that I got from this institution and its commitment to social justice and its financial support for people who want to work in that kind of area. And it's a great different kind of experience that I had where I got to expose myself to law in action in a different entirely community, and it was a great time.
That's great. Claire.
So I went the route of doing something completely non-law school related last summer. I worked at the Toronto Zoo in their education department, which was just so much fun. It's actually related to my master's research, which is why I was there. But it was such a fun experience. I got to pet like a hippo and I fed a giraffe, and it was just a really great experience. And I've talked about it in several interviews as well. So it kind of makes you look more well-rounded, even if you're not.
What like a hippo eat?
Hippos eat like carrots, like little,
cool.
like, and they do like a hungry hippo, like their mouth opens right up, you can throw it in. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that's a good anecdote. But I also worked as a teaching assistant. So being enrolled in the joint program, I'm also a master's student, so I can work as a teaching assistant. So I was a TA for environmental law actually last semester. So that was a really great experience as well.
That's terrific. And some of you might be thinking, well, what if I'm just so brilliant that I can write my way to financial security at Osgood by winning every prize available? The next question comes from Jessica in London, and the topic is what kind of academic prizes are available for students at Osgood. And there are, in fact, a wide range of prizes, some of which do have some financial element attached to them, but it's fair to say you can't get through law school just by winning those prizes. But Penny, do you want to say something about them, or Bruce?
No, we certainly have a lot of prizes, but you would not. They're more. They're not what? How can I say this?
They're a night out on the town to celebrate winning.
You might get a couple years out of them, but
They're not a
much
tuition
more.
paying kind of.
But we have some other prizes that do have more money. But I'm wondering if Jessica is referring to other awards, because what we do have we have substantial entrance and upper year scholarships. And these are, we have renewable scholarships that give students $30,000 over 3 years. So there are those kinds of things. And if we look at all of the awards, the prizes are really more for prestige, to be the top in a particular course or something like that. And of course, there are the medals, which are obviously the pinnacle of what someone would want to win. But the prizes, we have hundreds of prizes, but for small amounts of money usually.
No, and I think it is one of the important ways that we value academic performance, and we have, again, some prizes at the end of law school that are for leadership in other areas, ways of recognizing excellence. But the academic prize is attached to almost all of our major courses. And, while I didn't win many of them when I was an Osgoode student, I knew lots of people who did, and it's a double-edged sword because you don't want to first peak too early. See, it goes to your head and you think life is going to be full of academic prizes. It isn't always. So if you win them, you should celebrate, use the little bit of money that comes with it to celebrate, the recognition. And if you don't, know that you may well have the last laugh. So it's it's good either way. And let me offer anyone else who wanted to get a word in on prizes a chance before we move on. Okay, so let's now move to what you've heard the stage set for on a couple of different moments so far in the webcast, and that is Osgood's commitment to and great set of resources for clinical and experiential education. And I'll let Trevor begin, and I think this is where we may have a audio-visual, extra surprise, and we'll hear again from, I think, Elena and maybe the other students. So Trevor, over to you.
Terrific. Thanks, Lauren. Well, John, I think it was John from Toronto asked about CLASP, and our John here was just talking about his experience in Uganda. And one of the things, John, you mentioned was this idea of law in action. And one of the reasons I think you went there was for that kind of notion. Well, I think it's a great way to sort of set up this conversation, because what as the Dean mentioned, we'll talk about for a few minutes, is this idea of experiential learning and clinical education. So what is that, and what are we talking about? And many of you may have heard of some of this. Some of you may have heard lots, and some of you may not have heard much. The idea of experiential learning really is to try and do more of learning in action, being part of the sort of process of not just hearing and thinking about, but actually engaging in the process of education and being part of and actually doing some of that through that sort of dialogue of learning and thinking and doing. And there are opportunities outside the law school, and John mentioned one, and we'll come to some of those in a minute. But what I want to talk about really is how this has become part of the fabric of Osgoode Hall Law School. It's been a badge of Osgoode for quite some time, and it's just becoming more central to it every year, including some really recent and exciting initiatives that I'll tell you about. So I'll start with the broad. The idea of experiential learning really is learning by doing. A lot of your learning will be in somewhat traditional style, lecture style, seminar style rooms. And as Elena mentioned, a lot of our practice as academics, even in that kind of context, is really to try and be engaging through dialogue, through role plays, through exercises. A lot of what you will do will not be so much of a passive sitting and listening, but there'll be an active, engaged approach to your legal education. And I think you should come expecting that. You should ask us for it, and I think we promise to deliver it. And so that's one of the ideas of experiential learning, really is a more modern sort of responsive way of how we think about learners and how that works. In addition to that, however, we've moved to the idea that really we want all students not just to sort of be able to start talking in their classrooms, but actually to have opportunities to do law. And so one of the really exciting things about Osgoode is for this incoming class, you will now all have the requirement to do some kind of experiential program while you're here. And that sets us apart from every other law school in the country. There are other law schools doing experiential learning. There is not another law school that requires everyone to do it. And there are different ways to do that. There are in-class programs that will offer a really intensive kind of experiential component to them. And then there is a wide variety of what we call clinical and intensive programs, some of which have been with us for over 40 years, some of which are as new as last and 2 years ago. And it's a really exciting, interesting part of what we do, and I think it's, quite frankly, and selfishly, I think it's actually the main thing that we do. It'll be interesting to hear some of our students speak about it. And we'll do that in just a moment. But the sort of range of programs that I'm talking about, John, who raised a question from Toronto, talked about CLASP. And this CLASP, as I mentioned, is one of 2 poverty law clinics that we have at Osgoode. It's here in-house in our law school here at Osgoode. And students are here. Lots of first-year students are working here, upper-year students. There's a permanent professional staff, and highly engaged in the community that we work. We have other programs. Professor Ryder was integrally connected with the start of our anti-discrimination intensive program, a terrific program that brings together learning in the classroom with doing some major and important work in the context of anti-discrimination. We have an Aboriginal lands and intensive programs where students are placed in different communities around the world focusing on lands and Aboriginal issues. We've got business law programs, several of them. We have criminal law programs, several of them. We have a mediation program. We have intellectual property programs. We essentially, kind of like the clubs, have a massive range of things to do in these clinical and intensive programs, many of which will be available in your upper years. Some of which, like CLASP, will be available right off the bat in your first year. All of them will at some point, we will encourage you to jump into at some level in some way because we really do think they're part of it. Now, you've heard enough from me. I think it's more persuasive to hear from the folks who actually know something about it, the people who are in the programs. And first, I'm going to turn to Elena, and maybe you can talk about one of our criminal programs, the intensive program,
Yep.
and your experience in that.
I wasn't in the intensive program.
Or sorry, the Innocence Project.
Yeah,
the Innocence Project.
So the Innocence Project is great because we work with clients that claim that they've been wrongfully convicted. So it's fantastic that it's extremely practical and that you're actually working on reading transcripts and things that will really, really come to be very useful when you actually start work, because you've already done really, really practical things on the job. And it's great because like you also work on your writing and you get to work with clients and people, and you get to get used to the expectations of what it's like to work in law. And they're particularly special experiences. Like, for example, like working with class, like you get to work with clients and you actually get to help them with their problems. And also with Innocence Project, I know that I helped write a factive recently, and I saw Professor Alan Young argue and use one of my cases, and it was kind of exciting because I was like, oh, I helped. So it's really great because you actually feel like you're practically doing something. You're not just, as fantastic as classes are, it's not just reading something and that's slightly divorced from real life as a student. Like, you're actually in there and you're helping people out and learning more about your community as well.
Terrific. And folks who are working at class, for example, in a similar way, Elena described working in cases. If you're working at class, for example, you're going to be out in the communities. You're going to be at the courthouse nearby. You're going to be in community centers. If you were choosing Parkdale, you'd be in a different community, working with folks in that community on poverty law issues. If you were to take the mediation clinic intensive program, some of your work would be done here, and then you might be doing mediation work or public legal education work, again, out in the field. So it really is that idea of bringing law into the community into the law school, and then the law school into the community, which I think is a huge part of what we're trying to do. Maybe what we can think of, I mentioned the mediation program. Why don't we hear from our students from the mediation program, but this time by video.
Well, I'd say the biggest thing about the mediation program is that it's so hands-on. I mean, yeah, everything we did is learning by doing, and that's just an experience that you don't get elsewhere. You don't get that in a classroom studying case law or, the business, like all the business statutes. You don't get that kind of learning. And really, the best way that we learn is by doing.
For the first semester, we're learning the mediation skills ourselves. So we're in the seminar twice a week. I think it's a 3-hour period. It's kind of like an intensive. We learn everything that Leanne wants us to know about mediation. And then when we teach it to the students, basically we're teaching them the same skills at their own level.
I was thrown a wicked curveball because I was really cool and calm about it at the beginning, and then when I started doing the actual work, it was networking. You had to go out into the community that I had no ties to. I don't know anybody here, and I had to build relationships with people. And I thought, okay, I'm a likable guy. I can walk in there in one meeting, in 20 minutes everyone's gonna love me. I went to meetings after meetings, and these were 2, 3, 4-hour meetings, and you couldn't even plan for them.
Where the mediation clinic was focused in on dialogue, but also negotiation and compromising and building programs and getting things established, which I think is much more reflective of the real world and what you have to do outside of law school, but it still grounds the theory of legal analysis as well as negotiation or client counseling skills or mediation skills.
We just did as many hands-on projects as we could. So we would teach them in a conflict, this is how to speak, and it's an exercise called Speak to be Heard. Basically, it's a template on how to speak, so they would practice it with partners. We taught them about identifying the issues. They would read newspaper articles and find the issues in the newspaper articles and try to tell it to the class. It sounds really simple, but when you're teaching it to elementary students, it gets pretty complicated. We also taught them a bit of negotiation. we put tape on the floor, and you had to convince your counterpart to cross over to your side. And if they crossed, you would get $1,000. If you crossed, they would get $1,000. And really the point of the game was, if you guys thought about it for a moment, if you just switched sides, both would get $1,000. But I think maybe in the entire class, one kid figured it out, because Jamil helped him.
I prefer to learn from somebody who's done it and has been out there and is not just going to say, well, they tell you to do it on page 35, so you should do it on what page 35 says. You know, I respect experience. You know, knowledge and experience are two very important things, but I do feel that someone who has the knowledge and has the experience, such as Leanne, you know, is, you know, amazing with what she does. And she's able to bring us all together and show us, and when we sit down and we have mediations in class, she'll jump in real quick and be like, okay, well, this is what you probably should be doing as a mediator. These are the questions that you should be answering. She'll stop and then jump back and let us go right back to it. You know, and it was just great.
So terrific to hear from some of those students. And then in addition to some of the clinical and intensive programs, there are other experiential learning programs that we've got at the law school as well. You already heard from Professor Ryder the question that followed up with the Osgoode Hall Law Journal. That's a significant place to do some very academic immersed work. Another big area that we haven't spoken much about, although Bruce did mention it, is mooting. And every one of you in your first year program will do a moot. And a moot, for those of you that don't know, really is what I think of it as it's really a practice hearing of some sort. You stand up and try and do a trial or an appeal or a moot or a client counseling. Some kind of simulated exercise that is of a lawyering nature is really what that is. There's a mandatory moot in the first year. There are some optional moots in the first year. And then there are lots of upper year moots. So another sort of engaged, experiential kind of offering that, to the extent that you want to be proactive and get into it, tons of it in the first year as well. And then John also mentioned Uganda. One of our really interesting programs that is still largely student-run, or it really is student-run, is the International Legal Partnerships. And that's a program that is available throughout the law school, but lots of first-year students engage in this. And what that is really is summer placements that would start after your first year. It's all volunteer. You've got to sort of engage and sort it out yourself with help from the ILP folks. There's also a class that's attached to it, but again, a different kind of law and action idea that for those of you that are interested in that sort of thing, particularly from an international perspective, another option. There are all sorts of other ideas and things that we can talk to you about, and you can get in touch with us if you're not finding the information you need on our website or through the regular channels. Delighted to talk about it. Finally, I think the one thing I wanted to segue back into the full program, and it really starts in the first year, is the Osgoode public interest requirement. And others may want to jump in as well, but this spans a number of things. The Osgoode public interest requirement, again, is one of those things that sets Osgoode apart from other schools in this country. That is that, as you'll know, all of you before you graduate will have to do as a graduation requirement 40 hours of unpaid public interest work with a legal nature, broadly defined. It's a terrific program. All sorts of things will satisfy it. It is not narrowly defined. It's not a political agenda. It is broadly defined, meant to really stimulate people to see how law situates itself in the community and in action. And so that's how it links to some of the comments I've been making, is there are a number of opportunities to do that volunteer work, or that unpaid work, I should say, in the context of law-related exercises that have a major connection to the law school. All of our clinical offerings satisfy that, but there's other activities that people can get into, and there are a number of them, and maybe I can turn over to some of my colleagues, but thinking about the question from John about CLASP, that sort of volunteer work, there's a bunch of there's a major program we call our laws school, where our laws program, where students are working specifically with schools in our communities, where you're connecting up with high school students and doing a terrific amount of work on an unpaid basis. And that sort of thing is the kind of thing we're trying to encourage people to do, as well as all sorts of other opportunities that really are law in action as part of our experiential package.
That's great. And maybe what we'll do is we'll move to some of the questions to ensure we're responding to what's on your mind. And in the course of that, no doubt have the ability to speak a bit more about some of the opportunities under OPER and for first-year students to get involved at the get-go for experiential education and getting involved in the clinics. The first question is about another side to the academic program we haven't spoken as much about, but it's critically important and it's not divorced from the learning by doing, and that's research. This is from Jen in Burlington, and the question is, as a mature student, it's been a while since I've written academic papers. What kinds of workshops does the library offer for learning how to use their services? And this is maybe an opportunity to speak not just about the library, but about an academic success program that really begins with some of the orientation you've heard about and continues throughout. And maybe, Bruce, I can turn to you for some more insight on that.
Sure, thanks, Lauren, and thanks for the question, Jen. I'm really pleased that you raised it. It's a question that lots of law students have on their minds when they arrive at law school, because, as you know, there are no prerequisites in terms of particular study areas or experiences before arriving at law school. And so there are all kinds of people who are coming from backgrounds like in the sciences, say, who are worried about whether they have what it takes to do a good academic paper. And it's a very important part of the program here at Osgood. Professor Farrow was talking earlier about how we put experiential learning at the heart of our curriculum. We're also very strongly committed to making sure that every single one of our graduates has exceptional research and writing skills. And again, a distinctive feature of our curriculum is you will write a paper in first year, and then you'll be required to write a research paper in second year and third year. So every graduate of Osgood has written a kind of, in a cascading way, a smaller research paper and then a more in-depth one and then an even more in-depth one. And so we're committed to making sure you have the skills you need to be an excellent researcher and writer when it comes to legal analysis, and we want the world to know that about all of our graduates. That said, we don't expect you to be able to do it right off the bat. And in legal process, which is one of the full-year courses, starts in the fall, much of the first semester is focused on developing your research and writing skills. So library workshops are essentially built into legal process, especially in the early parts of this semester. And there'll be a series of assignments over the fall semester that will introduce you to the basic strategies and resources for legal research. And that will involve visits by the librarians to the classroom to tell you about, for example, the incredible array of electronic resources that are available through the York Library system now. And then in the winter, you'll be writing your first academic paper, because the fall writing assignments in legal process are shorter assignments, like preparing a memorandum for a lawyer or a brief for a court. And then in the winter semester, in your perspective option, you'll be doing a true academic paper, and about 25 pages long. And you'll be doing so, all of the perspective option instructors are trained to coach you in developing a research plan and a research strategy, and giving you feedback on paper outlines and so on. And the assistant dean first year also sponsors sessions that provide advice on the specificities of legal research and how to go about executing a strong academic paper in law. And in addition, the assistant dean first year often visits the perspective options and speaks to the students about the challenges of writing legal papers in the particular area that course is focused on.
Great. Well, I think one of the issues that defines the first year program is not just that journey to academic writing, but also the different time spans in which our courses take place. And that's a subject of a question from Stephen in Toronto. And I'll summarize it because it's a bit longer, but it's asking about the semester courses, particularly in the first year program involving torts, contracts, property. Not every school is semesterized. Some have full year classes. And as you've been hearing, state and citizen, legal process, actually our full year ethical lawyering, you've heard something about, happens in a more compressed time frame. So I think it's fair to say you learn in a lot of different settings, but the semester long courses also mean that students are writing final exams at the end of first semester and getting final grades, which in full year classes, students have to wait until April often to figure out where they are in terms of their performance. But it obviously brings about a very intense process as you dive into those semester courses. So I was wondering if you want to say something about that aspect. The question really is about what's the rationale, and is it ever detrimental to have courses taught compressed into a semester?
Well, I think the rationale is really we believe in mixing it up. And in the first year, you have some large classes, you have some seminar classes, you have different kinds of evaluation. I was talking about the course that's evaluated on the basis of a research paper, and others on the basis of final exams, or a mix of different exams or assignments over the course of the year in legal process. And there are advantages and disadvantages to doing courses more intensively and quickly and then spreading them out over a longer time. And it often has to do with just the development of skills and the learning curve and the pace of climbing that learning curve. And at Osgoode, I guess we made the decision that because there are advantages to shorter courses and there are advantages to longer ones, that it's probably better to have a mix. And so some of your courses will be more intense in the fall, and then they're over in December. And then others, like state and citizen, public and constitutional law, legal process, they're full year courses, and it gives more time for students to develop expertise and their skills in the area. And then there's the ethical lawyering course, which we feel is best taught with intensive engagement in two bursts, one at the beginning of September and one at the beginning of January. So we think we have an interesting and distinctive mix, to be sure, but there are good pedagogical reasons for it. And I think I was at a school almost all full year courses, and when you come to final exams in April and you've got to go all the way back to September to study, there's obvious disadvantages to that.
I think that's right. Trevor, did you want to?
No, yes, and I entirely agree with Bruce. And I think one of the other thing in terms of mixing it up and looking at, the way different courses are taught, the way different students learn. I think the other thing that happened when we took a look at the first year was looking at the overall package. What are we trying to accomplish, not through one set of individual courses, but in fact, what do we hope our students achieve at the end of that year collectively and together? And I think part of it was a practical matter, quite frankly, sorting out how we could best do what we wanted to accomplish. And part of it was a pedagogical matter, thinking how will people best learn, how will people best study, how will that work out. So I think it's certainly not without significant thought, but I think Stephen's right. It's different than some other programs, and there's merits and drawbacks to everything. So I think but I think it's distinctive and quite an interesting way we do it.
Great. Well, I think at this stage, it probably makes sense to turn to our last topic, and then we'll have a longer question period to finish up with, and we'll get to questions on any topics we haven't covered, and we may want to come back to the pajama issue because we didn't hear from Trevor and some others on that. But the issue is this balance. The law school experience is a lot about what happens in the classroom, in the clinics, exams, writing papers, experiential learning. But a lot of it is what happens outside the classroom, where you live, the friendships you make, how you interact with extracurricular activities, and just managing your budget, getting good meals in, getting enough sleep, and student life blends really seamlessly into the academic program in the lived experience of our first year students. And to speak a bit about student life to get us started, I wanted to ask John to talk about his residence experience. I have a very stylized and glamorous view of the Osgoode Chambers. I get invited there for a night of hot chocolate with the little marshmallows in it. I have a great lunch, and the student leadership shows off their stir-fry talents, and I'm sure life is always like that, but there must be moments where it has its challenges, and the campus is a large one and can be difficult to navigate if you're not used to universities of this size or cities of this size. So, John, why don't you start us off?
Certainly. So I lived in Osgoode Chambers in my first year. When I first moved to Toronto, I had never been to Toronto before, didn't know how to find an apartment, didn't know my way around the city and the different neighborhoods. So I wanted to find a way to ease the transition and just take one less stress off the table. Osgoode Chambers is a set of 3 different apartment buildings populated by just law students. A secondary consequence of living there, aside from it just being so conveniently close to campus, it's right across the street, is that you are living so close to other people in your classes and different community members. So when I would study and work on my classes with people in my section, I would live near and be able to socialize with a lot of other law students in different years, in different sections, and get to meet a lot of the broader community. It's a convenient package. It's one of those all utilities included, you just make sure the bill is in kind of deals. It really cuts down on a lot of things you need to worry about. And it is right across the street. And I think that plays a function in who's wearing the pajamas around here. They're usually the closest ones by. I've tried doing it on the TTC before, and it's just not the same.
That's a very good point. Now, whether you're on the TTC getting here or just crossing the street, though, every Osgoode student has a home away from home. And I'm thinking of the JCR. And in our new building, we made a bold and I think entirely appropriate judgment, which is to take the very best spaces in the new part of the building, which has floor-to-ceiling windows and soaring atriums and is an amazing space, includes a bistro and then the junior common room, the student centered lounge, to give that the best real estate. And I have to say, for those who did come to this law school in the years past, one had to go to the basement, to a darkened space, and it smelt of long ago beer-stained furniture. There was sort of a wet potato smell, if you've ever smelled wet potatoes, and all that is long gone. So, Elena, from the JCR perspective, the student space perspective, and some of what the building has to offer, both students coming from across the street and across the city, I thought you could speak a bit more about that aspect of student life.
Yeah, so this year was the first year that we really had full use of the facilities. I know that when John, Claire, and I were in our first year, all we had was a classroom and this very awkward hallway where you could kind of hang out with everyone, and that was kind of it.
In the basement.
Yep, in the basement, of course. So now it's really nice that we do have this lounge space, and we use it a lot for club events. It's usually different student organizations are always hosting events in there, and we, as a student government, always host one pub night per week. We're looking to expand that as we're getting used to the building more and more, but it is a lounge space for students, for people to just hang out and get to know one another, because especially you'll find in first year, it is a little bit isolated because you are with your section every single day, and it's hard to meet students outside of your section. So we as student government are trying to use as much of the space at Osgood as possible so that you can meet people outside of your sections, because I know it was really hard for me to do that as well, as when it was only in second year that I really got to know a lot more people. And to do with that, I would encourage everyone to do a lot of student activities even in first year. I know it's a little bit daunting because a lot of students fear that they won't be able to focus on their academic work a lot, but you will find that the more that you go into your first year, you will find a better balance. And I do encourage everyone to take part in mock trial, because we certainly loved it, and a lot of other club events as well, because you will get to meet people, and especially if you're from out of town, it'll help create that support system for you when you know, like, you find yourself really stressed out.
And what if I want to write for the Obiter, let's say?
It's very easy to write for the, well, no, it's not that easy to write.
It's actually pretty easy for me. I just send in an article.
That is true. But yeah, like, we do have a student newspaper that publishes at least once a week, and student government publishes in as well. There are opinion pieces, there are some creative pieces in it. So especially if you want a creative outlet, Obiter is a great way to do that. I know that this year Leon does want to do an arts festival as well. So we want to incorporate visual art and music, and just to have more outlets for students, because that's what makes it so special.
All right, Claire, let me ask you, there's a wonderful cocooning that comes from the law school experience, especially now that we have our great building back. but it's a big university. You're in a joint program. You've seen some of what the rest of York has to offer, and how has that changed your law school experience, seeing the rest of the university as part of your home as well?
Okay, so coming to Osgood now, you have everything in the building. So you have the library, and you have the JCR, and you have the bistro. You might be tempted not to leave, ever. So having been to other parts of campus, having to go, to the student center, to York Lanes to get food, or going to the gym, there are other places outside, and I have been involved in some other clubs on the York campus, different environmental clubs, going to see different, there's like film festivals that are held on campus as well. There are a lot of events. You are a York student as well, so you can use that student card to go to different events. And there's also like York Fest in like the early fall, where there's like bands and like cotton candy and like not parade, but like there's just like different things, like a street festival sort of thing. So there's a lot of different things on campus. I know people at Osgood sometimes don't want to be so affiliated with York because we are really isolated, but yeah, we are part of the community as well. So.
No, that's great. And John, just a quick word on student government, which is, I said earlier, not for the faint of heart, but it's one of the most enriching and fulfilling ways, I think, to really explore the law school experience, because you get to shape the decisions that make the law school what it is, and you've certainly been a part of much of that over the last couple of years. Is that something you'd recommend first-year students think seriously about?
Yeah, certainly. One branch of student government here at Osgood is called the Student Caucus, and that's a group of students that works with our faculty council that governs the academic and day-to-day business of the law school. So I got involved in my first year, and there's an opportunity for anyone listening to this webcast to get involved as a first-year rep on the faculty council and on Student Caucus. And those elections happen in the fall. And there's one person for every section, so there are 4 first-year reps. And right from the get-go, you can be involved in making the community a better place. Everything from working groups on the bistro and food, to student financial aid, to every component of the law school, like clinical education, you can get involved with and help shape the law school while you're here. And I can't say enough positive things about my experience that I've had with Student Caucus, and definitely recommend that people get involved, as well as its sister organization, the Legal and Literary Society, which works with every other aspect of the law school, everything from the health plan to social events and clubs and societies and all of that.
That's excellent. So let's turn to some more questions, and some of these will touch on student life. But Elena, did you want to add a thought?
I did, yes. I know that we talked about the Osgoode Chambers, and I know that I've been asked by a lot of incoming students whether the commute really is that terrible if you're living downtown, and it's not. It's only about 40 to 45 minutes, and I know a lot of people are really scared to live downtown. Not that it's dangerous, but just because it's really far away. But you'll find that a lot of students are in pockets in Toronto, and pretty much everyone at Osgood tends to live in the St. Clair West and Annex area, and a little bit on College Street. So if you are looking for a place, like that's the sweet spot right there.
And you will be. It's a great opportunity to plug the fact that you will be the first generation of Osgood students, those of you coming in this fall, who will get a chance before they graduate to take the subway to campus, because the subway is being dug as we speak. And in fact, it's the disruption on campus we all welcome as we see the enormous drills and cranes at work. And this will be ready before the Pan Am Games, which are coming to Toronto in the summer of 2015. So we hope it'll be sooner than taking the subway to your graduation, but we know that it'll happen before you leave. And I think that, again, will mark a real milestone, just as the new renovated building has been a milestone for students who've gotten to enjoy that this past year, and you'll be coming to make the most of that. So the question I wanted to turn to comes back to actually an element of student life and academic life, and that's coming to us on the question of public speaking. And the question is whether the law school has any workshops for students, such as the person writing this question, who struggle with public speaking. And we think of lawyers as public speakers. It's actually quite a diverse profession. Some do nothing but joyfully push compelling paper. Many, of course, are advocates and speak and give voice to the rights and interests of others. And the law school, in addition to the other elements, I wouldn't call them, as Trevor did, requirements that you have to do, but rather opportunities that you get to do. One of the opportunities that everyone gets to do, whether they want to or not, is explore oral communication. And we take that to be one of the fundamental aspects of legal education. But again, it's not a sink or swim environment. It's an opportunity to explore that side, particularly in mooting, and in negotiation, mediation, but in dispute resolution that has an oral component. I'm not sure if Trevor or Bruce want to add a word on public speaking and the place it plays in first year.
Sure. Why don't I start, and then Bruce, you can add any further comments. It's a really it's actually a fairly central part of a couple of courses in your first year. So there will be public speaking opportunities in the legal process course, where there is a moot that everyone will do. And there is some support for that built into the course in terms of helping people prepare to what that's going to look like and what have you. And so that's one place where, to the extent that people haven't done this before, we think it's a really great opportunity and an important part of the program, whether you're going to be a courtroom lawyer or not, is to get on your feet and to start thinking about how that might work. And we do know it's a daunting process, and we try and support you there. Another place that everyone does this is in the Ethical Lawyering in a Global Community course. Different format, different style of oral exercise, but in the winter in teams, everyone will be part of an advocacy initiative there. There's also, as I mentioned, for those who are interested in pursuing more issues, there are volunteer moot programs that have coaching and support attached to those. And this, all I'm talking about right now is the first year program. There is a significant upper year mooting program, all of which has coaching, volunteer coaches, staff coaches, and what have you, where there's a significant amount of support as well as the opportunity. Bruce, what about part of the academic success program? I would imagine that fits into this too.
Yeah, actually, we haven't done a whole lot of development of oral advocacy skills as part of the program. Maybe it is something we should think about doing more of. But I guess the main reason we haven't is we've really been thinking that legal process functions as the oral advocacy workshop that everyone really has to do, and for sure. And I think it's really important because lots of us are very nervous about getting up in front of the public and speaking, and don't arrive at law school magically as wonderful advocates. And so we really try to nurture it, and we do it in the legal process class, where you'll be doing a moot. It's a requirement of the course, but you're not doing it in front of a big crowd. You're going to be doing it in a room with a couple of colleagues from your class and a couple of judges, and you'll get very friendly and supportive feedback, and it's graded on a pass or a credit, no credit basis. But there are also lots of opportunities to get involved in competitive moots. A lot of first year students, for example, do the Learners Cup in October, and don't treat it as obviously at that point a month and a half into law school, don't expect to be brilliant on their feet, but why not give yourself the chance? There's not really any pressure, and if you happen to do really well, terrific. And but most students don't get heavily involved in mooting until the second and third year, where Osgood just has a fabulous track record and a wonderfully supportive mooting program. And I'm sure you've seen all the banners hanging in the moot court, and we expect all of you to help bring home more.
Excellent. Trevor, you had another thought?
All I was going to say is to the extent that if, I don't know whether this is your situation or not, but for this student who's raising the question, but I've had a lot of people say, I'm really nervous about public speaking, and it's and invariably what we say is, well, let's work with you and get you on your feet. And there's another program I'm thinking about where there's a firm that supports 24 of our first year students that go and do an evening session, and before that I put on a couple of 3-hour sessions where we work together and people get up on their feet and we talk about oral advocacy. And the fun thing there is lots of people in that room say, I'm terrified, I really don't know what I'm doing. And so we just jump in, and it's really fun. And I think the idea is that's often the best time to jump in, is when you really are concerned about something or what have you. And we do have lots of that kind of opportunity.
Now, it was easier for me because I felt the exact same anxiety for private speaking that I did for public, so it's a generalized speaking issue. Let's turn to the students to address the next question, which is, again, coming back to student life. And it's from Dylan in Aurora, and the question is, do students stay on campus, socialize, or study after class, or is it a commuting sense that students just come to campus to be on class and then disappear? And what's your experience, Lana?
I found that in the past, because Osgood has been under construction, it's been difficult to stay on campus for more than just studying, just because there was really nothing to do. But now that we have our new building, there's really an effort from the faculty, but also primarily student government, and really trying to organize events for students so that they do stay on campus. And I think especially with our big, nice library now, a lot of students do spend a lot of time actually staying on campus and studying and meeting with friends for lunch and then attending an event in the evening, because again, before we didn't have a library, so that was also an impediment to staying on campus. But now that we do have these resources, there's a very big push to just organize more events for students, to like have clubs participate more, so that you can spend an entire day at Osgood, and that's pretty much been our experience. Like we pretty much spend 12 hours a day here. So.
Yeah. I never thought I'd be the one to say this, but I find myself waking up often earlier than I have to for class to come here and just be on campus beforehand. There really is, once you get to know people, a great vibrant sense of community here. And as you get involved with different things like mooting or clubs and societies or mock trial, one more pitch for that, you'll find yourself just feeling really at home here. So either grabbing a bite at the bistro or working in the library between classes, there's really always something on the go. Twice a week, there are 2-hour windows where there are no classes scheduled at all, and that's where clubs and societies can really jam-pack a lot of different events. From the academic side, like speaker series, to different engaging dynamic events and fun outreach sessions that people are doing, different social events. There's lots of things to do. Thursday nights in the JCR is always a great place to end a week, and a lot of students, when they're making their schedules, happen to have Fridays free. So it's a nice way to like relax after a week of work and socializing and just taking in the community.
Yep, I definitely agree with everything that's been said. Also with, I just lost my train of thought completely. Also with, we have lockers, so that's a kind of a good thing. If you are here for 12 hours, you can, throw your extra books or your winter jacket, so you have a place to put your stuff that's secure. Like John, I feel like sometimes I'll get here early or end up leaving far later because I'll be trying to leave the building, then I'll bump into John, I'll bump into Elena, I'll bump into all these people that I know, and then that happens. And then also in terms of studying, definitely around exam period, people are using the study rooms or both levels of the library, and yes, often in pajamas.
Excellent. All right, let's squeeze in another question. This is coming back to an element we addressed a little bit earlier, which is how the courses aren't just cookie cutter across different sections, or you could have in the upper year administrative law, but taught in 3 different times in the syllabus by 3 different faculty, and there may be different textbooks and different emphasis in the syllabus. And the question is, how could the same course taught in the same semester or same year have these 3 different texts or 3 different approaches? And it speaks to one of the things we take most seriously as part of academic life, and that is that there is no cookie cutter experience at law school, that each course is a product of that professor's vision and commitment to how to teach. And so it's not unusual at all to find those textbooks to differ. Some of the first year classes have a team approach, and the faculty will come together and all broadly approach it the same way. More typically, that's not the case. Bruce, is that your experience?
No, absolutely, totally agree. And I think one of the reasons why there may be more variation, particularly in the upper year curriculum, is part of that's deliberate. I mean, we plan it that way. We know that there's a demand for more than one section in, for example, business associations. There's usually 3 different courses offered, and we try to cater to the different aspirations and needs of students. So, for example, Some people may want to have a very practice-centered approach to a course, and we have a wonderful team of adjuncts who teach at the law school who are full-time practitioners, often leaders in their fields. Other students may want a more academic, critical analysis of the area from a full-time professor, and so often that will explain the difference in approach. And there's of course all kinds of dimensions in which professors will differ. But one of the great things about our upper year curriculum is you'll be able to choose not just from this wide array of courses, but also from the perspective that it's taught from.
That's excellent. Let me turn to one more question, which deals with an interesting element of the program we haven't addressed, and that's the Joint Common Civil Law program. This is something we share with the University of Montreal, and maybe is an interesting moment to talk about exchanges generally. This question is, how does that process work, and is that program a stepping stone to clerking at the Supreme Court of Canada? One of the elements of that is, of course, working with a court that deals not just in common law, but civil law. But is this, maybe anyone wants to address the question, but also the broader question of exchanges, which I think is a great element of our program?
I actually don't know the answer to the question about the timing of the enrollment, so I can't help on the answer to that. And I think to the extent that that is a question, where I would first direct you is to our Student Services office, and I think you'd get a really quick answer. If not, push us further and we'll find you one. What I can say though is this year, for example, in my legal ethics seminar, an upper year seminar, I had a number of students in the joint that were transfer students, or sorry, part of the joint the program, and it was just a terrific different perspective that comes to the room. So what I like about the question is focusing on the content in our room, and there really is a diversity of voices that comes from that program. As to the date, I don't know, and as to whether it's a precondition for the Supreme Court of Canada,
no, definitely not. Although it's a great boon, and not just because the court deals with both, but because much of the world is governed under civil law jurisdictions. Here, it's a product of the Quebec distinctiveness, and it is in third year that you apply for this. So it's a year that you complete after the 3-year JD that also gives you the exposure to the University of Montreal, and we have students from there completing an extra year here to get the common law degree. And again, it's one of the many exchanges, but one of the few that actually involves joint degree programs. Let me again address a question that's on the minds of many, and that is textbooks. The question is, will students be buying textbooks during orientation week? What's the approximate textbook cost? And this may be one of the last years we address this question, when we still have something called books that you buy, as many faculty move to electronic materials, and we're digitizing much of the first year in law school experience. But while we still have textbooks to buy, Penny, this is clearly something that people need to factor into their budgeting. Is this a question that you've addressed before?
It is a question that I addressed just today with John, because we were updating our budgets, and we've had $900 as an annual cost for books. That's in first year, and as John says, there's some variety between which section you're in as to the total cost. And okay.
I was going to say we should add, because this was part of the question, that we have our own in-house bookstore.
Yes.
The Materials Distribution Center, or MDC as it's affectionately known, downstairs, has the textbooks that you're going to be assigned. So this is another one of those cocooning experience where you come here, and it's all again available with extended hours during the first weeks of law school. When Penny was speaking, though, about the cost, I think it is important to consult your particular section and its classes, because this can vary. And one of the reasons we're exploring more digital resources is to deal with cost and of course, take advantage of the fact of how much is publicly available.
John did some research this morning.
John or Elena, you want to both give a last word on that?
The only thing that I would mention is the fact that student government does have a used book resource that we will be emailing to students. So if you aren't particularly keen on buying a new textbook and do want to save money, we will be providing that resource to students.
And John?
Just really quickly to tie in the orientation aspect. During orientation week, you will not be taking your courses like contracts and torts. Those only start the next week. But the textbooks are often available during that first week. So if during one of the windows, when there's some free time during orientation week, you'd like to line up for the MDC and purchase your textbooks, there are also lockers available on camp, like right there next to the MDC, that you can get access to from day one if you want to get your books right away and then store them there for later.
Well, let me say this, sadly, but predictably, we've come to the end of our time before we've come to the end of the issues that would be worth exploring. And we know there are some questions we didn't get a chance to get to. And of course, many areas of the first year experience in the law school that, will occur to you as important, but after this webcast is over. So this is just the beginning. The door is open. All of us, and of course from Student Services and the incredibly helpful staff there, you can find answers to any and all questions. Hopefully many of you will be here if you haven't already had a chance to visit campus for our welcome day coming up on the 12th at 5 o'clock. And I hope that all of you, of course, will join us at the end of the summer. We're incredibly excited to have you here. And I hope beyond getting a flavor for the programs and student life and the areas that we know are top of mind as you make that transition to law school, I hope you've also gotten some flavor for how much we view this as a community experience and an experience of belonging to a place that is about much more than just the legal education you'll find here, which is the best you'll find anywhere. And the last word I have is simply thanks to those who participated here on the panel tonight. There's a very talented group that has been putting this together behind the cameras and getting all of this set up for us, and then creatively heckling us as we've been talking. So we've had to remain very focused on you, and it's been very fun. And so thanks to the whole team and to our Assistant Dean Maya Bulwa, who is one of the greatest resources you'll have, and a producer in a former life who enjoys this foray back into her previous life. And I hope you have a great rest of the night, great rest of the summer, and we'll see you in late August, early September. And that's a wrap.